I don't think any two teenagers are the same. As you mentioned, I've got several that I interview in my book, and they are doing things like accidentally starting nonprofits. The Frances that I discuss in the book.
I'm laughing
She
because I accidentally started this podcast. Hi, welcome to Switching Mindsets. This is Anuradha, and I'm speaking to Dr. Corinne Auman, a gerontologist who is on a mission to change the conversation around aging. Her book, Keenagers, Telling a New Story About Aging, emphasizes that 55 to 80 years old is an extended middle adulthood, not a decline. Hi, Corinne.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm great. Wonderful to have you. And one of my favorite topics to talk about aging and how, the middle years, right? Like, Chip Conley has called it, and you've mentioned that in the book as well. It's not years that have got added on to the end. It is the middle years, right? The extra 30 years that we've got.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
all have, or many countries have this kind of increased longevity, and we often kind of hear about it in a very negative way, like the silver tsunami or the gray wave, like it's this sort of horrible thing that's going to happen to all of us. And yeah, Chip makes a great point in the sense that this extra longevity is not more years to quote unquote be old. It's more of an extended midlife where we have all these additional years where we are healthy and active and want to be contributing. We want to be productive in some way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to keep working the same job that you've been doing for 30 years, but it really is an opportunity to reinvent yourself and say, okay, I've retired from that first version of me. Who am I going to be now? And what do I want to do with all these extra years that I've got in front of me?
Yeah, wonderful. It's a great way to look at it, instead of just being put out to pasture and, how it was earlier that you retire at this age, you're done with your financial planning. And if you haven't, then you've missed the bus, really.
Yeah.
So, talking about financial planning, like I was, a lot of people that I speak to, they say that too, that if you haven't managed it, figured it out by 50, then I mean, chances are you've literally just missed the bus. And you've said that no, because you're still working, you're still active, so you don't need to have figured it out by then, right?
You don't have to have everything figured out because it's not the end of the road, so to speak, that it might have been in previous generations, because so many people today are continuing to work well into their 60s, maybe even their 70s, and doing things that continue to earn money, right? They may not be working full time, but the idea that you've got to have it all settled by 50 or 55 or you're absolutely doomed is really an outdated perspective.
Good to know. For me, at least, really good to know. So tell me, Corinne, your book is called Keenagers. So I saw that, you were discussing with a friend and you couldn't come up with any name to call this generation. And she asked her mom and she came up with this, right? So can you tell
Yeah,
me about the term teenagers and what it means, really?
yeah. So the definition of the word keen, and that's Keen for people just listening, because I know it sounds a lot like teen, but that's not what we're talking about. The definition of keen is highly developed or having a really strong interest in something, like I'm keen on that. And I really like that word for describing this kind of extra time, the people who are in this age group, um, because they are still keen on life. They are highly developed, right? They're in their 50s, 60s, 70s, but they are still interested in doing things. You said a second ago, we're not being put out to pasture anymore, right? They are not ready to be put out to pasture or to be sitting in a rocking chair, on their front porch watching the world go by. They are keen to still be involved in life, active, engaged, doing interesting things, learning new stuff. And so when my friend's mom suggested this as a word, I thought, oh, I really love it in terms of how to describe this group of people. And the other thing about it is it's a positive word. It's really difficult to talk about older adulthood, to talk about the retirement years in a positive way, because so much of our language is negative. Um, I really struggled to find a positive word, and so it's like, okay, we gotta make our own at this point to try to have positive language.
So who is a teenager? I mean, if you're talking age-wise, demographic-wise, who is a teenager?
So there aren't hard and fast lines around this. It's really anyone who is approaching retirement. And some people retire in their 50s, some people retire in their 70s, but they're approaching this time period that we think of as retirement. And they are still interested in continuing to be active and engaged and contribute in some way. So maybe they have retired from a first career and now they're thinking about starting their own business, or they're caregiving, or they're raising their grandchildren, or they're volunteering, whatever it is that they're doing, but they're not doing what we think of as kind of traditional retirement, which is I've retired from all work and now I just sit around and do nothing, or I only do leisure activities, I only play golf, or I only play pickleball, or whatever it is, or I can go on vacations, right? They're still interested and active in life.
Yeah, it's sounds great. It sounds exciting, but I know that it can be a bewildering time, to transition from
Hmm.
literally one career to the next, or to suddenly have your current occupation come to a halt, and you don't know what to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, how does
And
it look like? Yeah.
we don't prepare people well for it because our views on the retirement years, our kind of stereotypical ideas about it are still there, even though the time period itself has really changed. So, people think about, oh, you retire at 65. Well, the retirement age was set at 65. Like that's when you got your Social Security benefits here in the United States. But we really only expected you to live to like 67. So, we were thinking your retirement was going to be a couple of years, and now you're looking at a couple of decades. But we haven't changed how we plan and prepare for that time period. So people get there and they retire and they think this is going to be great. I'm going to love it. And they typically do. You kind of have this honeymoon period after somebody retires of about 18 months or 2 years. And then after that, they start looking around going, wait, this is what I'm going to do for the next 2 decades of my life. And that can be really disorienting and disconcerting to people, especially if you found a lot of your identity through work. So then you're kind of looking around going, who am I and what am I supposed to do with all this time I have on my hands? And what do you mean nobody really needs me for anything or really wants me, right? They don't want my opinion or they don't want me involved in stuff. And, that's a path that people have to negotiate. And if they do it well, then they can come out on the other side with renewed purpose and energy and meaning in their lives. And if they do it poorly or don't get it resolved, that's when you look at kind of a downward spiral, maybe depression and anxiety and feelings of worthlessness because they can't figure out who they are anymore. And that's not a great place to be.
Yeah, I think because we all suffer from those stereotypes, we ourselves are victim to it, right? Because we believe it
Mhm.
somewhere.
Yep.
Because if I also, if I have to work with younger people or just encounter them at work or something, I'm trying to be more relatable, somewhere trying to show that, look, I'm humble, I'm very relatable, trying to make yourself smaller in front of people, look, I don't have a big ego, things like that. Because we already, somewhere, defensive, that, oh no,
Yeah.
look, I'm not what you think of, what elder people look like. So that's what it is,
Yeah.
Yeah. But tell me, teenagers, what are they up to? You've mentioned a few in your book, but I'd like to hear from you. What are they doing? What are the exciting stuff are they up to?
You know, I don't think any two teenagers are the same. Um, as you mentioned, I've got several that I interview in my book, and they are doing things like accidentally starting nonprofits. The Frances that I discuss in the book,
I'm laughing
she
because I accidentally started this podcast. So,
see, there you go. And that's just it. They're kind of falling into things that
yeah.
they find interesting and fun, and they just kind of fall down that path, and then they go, "Well, look at me. I've started a podcast, or I've started this nonprofit that's now growing into this nationwide thing." And hey, wait, what am I going to do with all this? So, I think people really do their best when they find a passion project, that thing that they just found really interesting and wanted to do, or that job that they always wish they had but didn't. I'm starting to work on my second book, which is going to be about how to be a teenager. And I just interviewed a lady for that book who she was a nurse all of her career, but prior to going into nursing school, she had really gone back and forth. Do I want to go into the ministry? Do I want to become a pastor? Um, or do I want to become a nurse? And she'd chosen to be a nurse. So now that she's retired from nursing, she's going back to that other thing that she almost did. And so she's in classes now to become a spiritual advisor for people. So a kind of version of ministry. And she's doing that and really starting on a new career path, although she's planning to do it part time and it's something she can do from home and it has all these pros to it, right? It's very appealing. But she's really embarking on, a new version of who she's going to be, but it's kind of always been there, right? Like she always had that part of herself. She just didn't have time to go down that path before. So I think people do people who do the best as they move through these years, at least from what I've seen, are the people who find that thing that they were passionate about or that they were really interested in and they pursue it. Maybe not as a full-time career, but they go down that path because it's kind of something they've always wanted to do and now they have time to do it.
Yeah. I also found interesting that you mentioned several development theories in the book. And what's interesting is that, we currently have no term or no reference point for this sudden, what do you call it, this bounty of extra 30 years that we've been given. We don't have any, even psychologically, historically as well, it looks like, we have no idea what to do with this unprecedented development. So
Right.
I'm just going to quote, you've written that these theories, along with a few others, have a common viewpoint. Once you're past 60, development is done. It is time to retire, withdraw, and perhaps reflect upon your life. Right. And while these theories may have been applicable when they were first proposed and lifespans were shorter, they're not applicable to the extended lifespans we have today. Right. And you said
Hmm.
that till adolescence, sorry, I'm getting the number wrong probably, but there are like 5 stages. But after adolescence to old age, there's like hardly 3 or 4. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and those theories really made sense at the time they were developed. The problem is they don't really make sense now because we do have this extra time period. And this is really recent. I mean, this is only within the last 100 years that we've gotten this extended longevity. So we're dealing with something new, and our developmental theories have got to examine this as well as us as individuals and societies to go, okay, wait, what is happening here? How should people be behaving? How should we as society be reacting? Should we still be saying 65 is the retirement age? If people are living so much longer, and how do we change our views on it and just understand it? Because that's the other thing. I don't think people really understand what has happened. I mean, they kind of do, like they know that their own parents or grandparents are living longer than, maybe previous generations do. but I don't think they understand it at a cultural level other than the negative things that people hear about, again, the gray wave and stuff like that. Because the news media really portrays this as a negative thing, right? Like it's going to doom us all that people are living so much longer and we need more babies and we need people to not live as long, stuff like that. But if we could shift the view on that, if people really understood, how many more years of healthy, active, productive life we're getting, then we could really view it as an opportunity, right? Think of the value of having all of that wisdom and knowledge and expertise and energy that these generations, these years are giving us that we could put to use if we weren't telling them, hey, it's time to retire and you should be done by now and we don't really want you around, right? Like that shift. And I'll give you an example just from my own life. My day job, I run a care management agency, which is we help people when they are navigating caring for an aging loved one. And when I started my company back in 2012, I really thought I was going to be helping 40-year-olds who were caring for 70-year-old parents. Mm-mm. What I do is I help 70-year-olds who are caring for their 95-year-old parents. The 70-year-olds that I work with they're caregiving, but they're also, got grandchildren and great grandchildren. They're maybe working part-time. They're doing all kinds of interesting things. They're not the ones getting the care. It's their parents. And, that was a big shift in my own mind to go, oh, this is a totally different experience than what I thought it was going to be. And if I'm wrong, because my background is in working with older adults, if I was that wrong about who I'm going to work with, everybody else has got, because I was believing the same sort of stereotypes that everybody else was believing too.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe you because, even I, of course, I don't have the experience in the sector that you do, but I was doing some work, with a senior platform. And exactly this, they had this, they wanted me to do a session on caregiving. And I was like, who would they be doing caregiving for? They need caregiving, right? And I realized that all of them, all the seniors or teenagers had parents to look after.
Yep.
So that's what it is. So it's so limited, our own thinking.
Hmm.
You don't go there.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
until you are actually interacting with these individuals, I don't think you realize it. And because we do tend to separate the generations, right? We tend to live separately, we tend to work separate, it's that whole thing of I need to interact with you to understand, oh, wait, like this is what a 70-year-old is actually like, not the stereotype that I have in my mind of what a 70-year-old is like.
Yeah. No, in India too, like we were discussing earlier, we have multi-generational households and, families. It's still there. I mean, it's not as ubiquitous or universal as earlier, but it's pretty much there. It's not that it's a rare thing or something, but even then, it still comes
Hmm.
as a surprise for things like this because it's just in our heads. So tell me, going back to the development theories, we have a lot of work cut out, right? So, as a psychologist, as a gerontologist working in this field for over 20 years, what do you think is required, for psychologists and other people in academics? What is required, to set maybe new developmental theories in place? What do we need to do?
Well, I mean, I just think, first of all, there need to be more gerontologists. Unfortunately, I think because of our age stereotypes and our biases, there aren't nearly enough people who study older adults who are interested in studying older adults. And, there are programs around for gerontologists to get your degree in that area, but they actually are closing. Even though we have more and more older adults, we see those programs being some of the things that are going away rather than being funded and being promoted, that sort of thing. But we've got to have people, researchers, who are interested in studying these individuals. It's studying older adults. And again, because of our biases, somehow everybody's interested in studying kids and they're not so interested in studying older adults. And that is a huge problem when we've had this sort of demographic change because in order to understand them, in order to benefit from the demographic change, in order to help and support the people who are in this age group, we need more programs, we need more scientists, we need more theorists examining this age group so that they can put out a new theory of development. They can really understand how people are changing as they move through this time period. And that's I think you mentioned it earlier. We don't get to be adults and then just we stop developing, right? Like you are different today than you were 10 years ago. And yet somehow we just kind of go, oh, you're an adult, you're done now. And we don't
Yeah.
study that kind of change the way we study little kids. And I think part of that, little kids are changing so fast that we're like, ooh, that's fascinating. But adults are changing too, and that development doesn't stop. It's just probably a little more difficult to see and measure because for a couple of reasons. One, it's not the growth spurt like you see in little kids, but two, getting older people, adults and teenagers and beyond to come in for research studies is also really hard because they're busy, right? They're living their lives. And so it's not like a college student that you can say, hey, I'll give you some extra credit if you come in for a research study. It's more difficult to get adults to come in for research in the first place.
Yeah, it's very interesting, what a loss. Because really, I
Mhm.
can see myself as well, there's so much because, in the 30 years that I've also been in a straight career, career mode. You're earning your money, you're learning your thing, you're in one
Mhm.
field. And suddenly I feel like a different person. I'm exploring so many new things. You have the time because you want to. And the other reason is, of course, nobody else wants you. So anymore. But, it's a wonderful time. Your horizons are expanding, you're learning new things and
Mhm.
all that. So, yeah, it's great. But tell me, you also spoke about how 70-year-olds are looking after 95-year-olds. And this
Mhm.
also, earlier you said that, seniors or teenagers are looking after grandchildren. But even in
Mhm.
India, people are marrying late, having kids in their 40s now. It's becoming quite the norm now.
Right.
So many of them, even in their 50s, 55, they probably have kids who are still finishing school, finishing high school, going into college. So
Yeah.
it's that sandwich generation, right? So the
Yeah.
demands on, people, what you call middle sense, right? Not adolescence, middle sense, right?
Yeah.
So what you've mentioned in the book as well, that it's a huge generational shift and it's quite unprecedented. We don't know what to make of it, right?
Right. Because it's new, right? We've never had this many generations alive at the same time. I mean, it's so much more common now to have five generations in one family alive at the same time. And on the one hand, that's wonderful. And on the other hand, we're like, wait, so we've got great grandma, grandma, mom and dad, children, grandchildren, all there together. And that's a different family structure than what we've had traditionally.
When you say that, it sounds so wonderful. Like, so many generations at the same time. That's so nice, really.
It is, but it also, so what's happened is we used to have kind of a pyramid shaped family system where you had like the grandparents and then they had a bunch of kids and then let's say I'll give you my family structure. This is on my dad's side of the family. We had grandparents. They had 14 children, seven of whom made it to adulthood. Okay, so two parents, seven children who made it to adulthood, and then each of those seven children had about four kids, three or four kids, and then those three or four kids went on to only have one or two, right? But we had this kind of pyramid structure. Um, Now we have what we call a beanpole structure because we've got great grandparents, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren. And there are fewer people in each generation. So where my grandmother was one of originally 14, when I become a grandmother, I will have been one of two, right? So it means you've got more generations alive at the same time, but fewer people to actually care for the oldest generation because there's more people beneath, but there's not as many younger people who are working and doing and active and doing as many things because it's this beanpole rather than the big kind of pyramid with lots of, children and grandchildren. And that changes how many people are available to care for the oldest generation. I think the numbers on it are like there used to be 7 caregivers in any family for one older adult in that family, and now we're down to about 2 caregivers in each family for each older adult that's there. And that changes the weight. I don't want to say burden. I don't like the word burden because caregiving is work, but a lot of people get really offended when you tell them it's a burden because it's like, no, it's a gift and you do want to care for
Yeah.
your loved one, but it's work. And so it means that the work of caregiving gets put on 2 people rather than spread out over many people in a family.
It's so interesting to say that, because it's exactly like that in India as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, from the pyramid structure, you've gone to the beanpole structure. I really like that, that comparison. It's really nice. So tell me, you're talking about care, and you've written in the book as well that it's something normal, as you're saying, that it's not a burden, it's not a gift. It is just something normal that, it will happen to you in life. All of us have to get there, either being
Mm-hmm.
cared for or caring for, right?
Yep.
So, since you're working in that field, I mean, your day job, you said, is in that. So, what is your insight there?
Exactly what you just said. Caregiving is a normal part of life. And it's funny because when we think about caregiving and like kids, everybody kind of has this very positive, right? You want to care for your kids, you're going to raise your kids, you're going to protect your kids, you're going to do all these things. And then when it gets shifted to caregiving for aging loved ones, be that your parent, your spouse, that sort of thing, it somehow takes on this negative connotation. And part of that is our this idea that we're all supposed to be independent. Or like once you get to be an adult, you're supposed to be completely independent and never need anybody to help you with anything ever again. Which you're laughing as I say that, and
Yeah.
because it's unrealistic, right? We are going if you live long enough. You're going to need care. Maybe you're going to have surgery and you're going to need somebody to care for you after the surgery. Maybe you're going to just get older, and as things change as you get older, you're going to need some assistance with different stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is this idea that we are somehow, as a species, supposed to become completely independent as an adult and maintain that independence at all costs. That is not who we are. We've always needed each other. You live in villages, you live in groups, and you support each other. And I help you, you help me. So this idea that we don't need care is very harmful because it keeps people from feeling like they can ask for care when they need it. It makes them feel ashamed or burdened when they ask for it. And then it also kind of sets up the caregiver to feel resentful, right? Like you shouldn't need it. But it also puts them in a bad position, like with their employers or with other parts of society, because we don't set ourselves up to support caregivers, to offer them time off or flexible schedules or any of the things that they need. Because again, we've set up this whole thing like, nope, you're not supposed to need caregiving. Don't, and we're not going to support you if you're trying to do that.
Yeah, and just the other day I was telling a friend of mine because I've not had a full-time job for a year now, right? And I'm hate to admit it, but I'm getting more and more used to it. So so I was just telling her that, oh, in a full-time job, it sounds so weird that if you have to go and your mom is hospitalized, you have to actually take permission from someone for that. I need a day off, I need a couple of hours. And I said, that sounds so weird.
Yeah.
But that's how,
Yeah.
and she was like, yeah, one of my friends' mothers was in ICU. She had to apply for leave. And I was like, yeah, it's so bizarre. And what you said, it is normal, but we feel apologetic
Right.
about asking for leave for time off.
To care for a family member, right? To care for
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
we love, to do the most basic human thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like as if it's unheard of, and it's going to happen to everybody, and it's already happening for all you know.
Yeah.
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 So I think we need to have these conversations, normalize all this. Your company, you said, is called Choice Care Navigators. I just looked it up. So,
Hmm.
I see. So you talk to families, right?
Yeah, we talk to anyone who is caring for an aging loved one. And, it
Yeah.
can be a spouse, it can be a parent, it could be an aunt and uncle, whoever it is. And usually people call us when there's a crisis, right? Like something has happened. I actually just had a friend call me last night at about 8:30, and she said, something has happened with my mom. We've gone from she's living independently to she's in the hospital, and the hospital is saying she can't come home and be alone anymore. So in a span of 24 hours, she had gone from my mom lives independently in an apartment to my mom has to find somewhere else to live and she can't live alone. And that is a very typical call for me. So it's usually there's some sort of crisis, something has happened, everything was fine, and now it's not. And what she needed from me was to understand really the whole system, right? Like give me the down low on what kind of care is available, how much it costs, how do people pay for it, how do I find it, just all of those things. Because we don't think about it, we don't pay attention to senior care until we're in that kind of crisis moment. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it's like, oh, wait, I don't know anything about this, and I need to know everything right now. And that's a very typical phone call.
Yeah, and I think it's also who do you call in that
Hmm.
moment of panic. Even if, that first call, ki, oh my God, this has happened to me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes, you can
You
call
call
me.
me.
Yeah.
You call me or someone like me. I mean, there
Yeah.
are there are care managers all over the United States, and you really want someone in your local area who knows what the resources are in that area, who knows what the rules are for your state, things like that. So you want to find someone locally that you can talk to and who can walk you through what the options will
Yeah, and in
be.
India too, a lot of senior care is senior living facilities, senior care. There are a lot of new startups that are coming in this field. It's very encouraging, really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, Corinne, I want to ask you about how you got into gerontology and, into elder care or whatever the right word is. So, so
Sure,
tell
sure.
me. Yeah.
I think myself, like many people who are in this field, I got into it because I had a great relationship with an older adult. My grandparents lived right next door to us when I was growing up, and I adored them and got to spend a lot of time with them. I also saw what happened when my grandmother needed care, and my mom and her sister kind of got thrown into being caregivers overnight, and they didn't know, right? They don't know what the resources are. How do you find people? What do you do? And I watched that process over a number of years and just thought, this is dumb. Why isn't there somebody who helps you figure this stuff out? And so that's really what planted the seed for my interest in working with older adults. I did go on and get my PhD in developmental psychology, and my specialty is adulthood and aging. And then, ultimately starting the business as well. So, I mean, I have a passion for getting other people interested in working with older adults because I think it's really needed, and I think it's a really interesting field. But then also, helping families who are in the middle of this, work through it, because so I've kind of got the research education side, but then also the very applied, let's get out here and do this work and help people get through, because we all are going to have those moments in our families where there's some sort of crisis and you're just not thinking clearly in that moment. Your loved one is sick or hurt in some way, and you can't process what's happening. And you need somebody, you need an expert, you need somebody who's going to give you some guidance to get you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's just somebody who can listen to you, you can Somebody
I
was
joke that
there.
I'm a part-time therapist.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure it's a full-time job. Yeah. So tell me, Corinne, how should we look at aging? Like anybody who's, a, you know, before you get to becoming a teenager, you lose your job, or not even lose your job. Let's say you've retired, or
Mhm.
from 55 to 75. Most people are floundering. It takes a little while, as we discussed, to come to that stage where you become a teenager, a happy, excited teenager. So, how
Mhm.
should people look at this stage of life, when it hits them?
I really, if we could reframe it to it's an adventure, right? Like this is a new adventure that I am on in this stage, or that whoever this person is on. And so if you're on a white, think about it like whitewater rafting. If you've ever been, down a river on an inner tube kind of thing, it's like we're going on an adventure, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We don't, and there will be some waterfalls, right? There will be some things where we kind of go off a cliff and go, oh, what's going to happen at the bottom here? But this idea that it's an adventure that's going to have ups and downs, that's going to have really exciting things that happen, and it's going to have some kind of scary things that happen. But I'm going to put on my life jacket, right? I'm going to put on my life preserver and prepare, right? I'm going to do everything I can to stay healthy, to do all my legal documents, to prepare for my future as much as I can. I'm going to get a good guide in the back of the boat. So I'm going to get a care manager or some other, a financial advisor. I'm going to get some good guides in the boat with me. And I'm going to go, and it's going to be fun. Like if we could, I think so many people look at that time period and anticipate, oh, this is going to be, it's all downhill and it's going to be terrible, that sort of thing. If you could reframe that as, no, this is going to be an adventure, right? I am going to get everybody in the boat, and we're going to have a good time and see where it goes.
Yeah, very, very true. And at the beginning of the podcast, I asked you your age and I said that you don't look 50. And I myself didn't know whether I'm saying the right thing. And you were like, yes, it's a compliment. You took it as that. But then this is what 50 looks like, right? So, and it's true, because we see so many people and we say, oh, it looks too young, But I think teenagers, senagers, perennials, whatever word we call them,
Yeah.
elders, I think they need to be more visible,
Yeah.
right? More
Yeah.
out there, living their life and more visible so that more of us, see them and we realize, I mean,
Yeah.
it's young.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if this is true in India right now, but on TikTok in the US, there's a trend right now that's like, this is what 50 looks like. And so it's all these women, of course, not men, but women, of course, coming on
Makes sense
TikTok
too. Yeah.
without any makeup or anything like that, going, this is 50. And it's so interesting to me, the reactions that have been on that trend, because some people get on there and people are being really awful to them. They're going, oh, you look 75, or, whatever it is. And then other people, look younger than 50 or whatever age they are in their 50s. And the thing that I take away from it, like, because it's so much diversity, there is no, this is what 50 looks like. Because what I see with all those videos is there's a lot of different things that 50 looks like. It is wildly variable. And so this idea that somebody looks 50, that or looks, 60, 65, whatever it is.
Or looks
No, it has,
40, looks 35,
yeah, it
yeah.
has everything to do with where you live, how hard your life has been, how well you've taken care of yourself, how much sun exposure you got. Like, I mean, just all kinds of variables. There is no, this is what fill in the age looks like.
Absolutely. What a beautiful note to end on. And really, it's just biology sometimes. It's so many things. So it's just diversity. It can look like
Hmm.
many things, and I think we should be used to all of it.
Yeah.
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 Thank you so much, Corinne.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for doing this.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure.